Yeah. Okay, the Jentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Jentry. The Jentry Podcast. The Jentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello and welcome to the Jentry Podcast. Today we have an amazing guest. We have Seth Walsh, who is one of the council people of Cincinnati, Ohio. This man has started an incredible career in Cincinnati, and I just have to put one personal quip. Cincinnati is the home of St. Xavier High School, where my team, DeMatha Catholic High School, was number 3 in the nation, and they were number 1 in the nation, and we unfortunately lost. But I won't hold that against you. We played on ESPN in the Herb Street Classic, but hey, you can't win them all. So I'm a fan of Cincinnati, but that one still hurts, Seth. But welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
It's good, man. And just for the record, I went to Xavier University. I'm not St. X, so we don't have to be rivals.
I did see that. And before we jump into your background, which I definitely want to be able to do, I'd love to just always ask, what is the special sauce of Cincinnati? What makes Cincinnati great?
Well, man, if you haven't been to Cincinnati, you are missing out. It is an incredible city. It's one of such rich history, and it's so neighborhood centric. So we have 52 unique neighborhoods in the city of Cincinnati. I like to say you can do a different staycation every weekend and have a whole different experience all year round. And so we've got, areas that feel very Appalachian. We have areas that feel very like, we've got like our own Hyde Park. Feels like you're in DC at some points. You have a beautiful downtown that is often used for films to replicate what New York City felt like in the 1800s and 1900s. One of the strongest German heritage areas called Over the Rhine, which is really coming back. We've got 3 major professional sports teams between the Cincinnati Bengals, the Cincinnati Reds, and FC Cincinnati. It's such a great city to be a young professional in. It's a great place to live and raise your family. You can have a different area of the city you move into for every facet of your life.
I love that. And I have been to Cincinnati, and I can attest to it. It was a tough trip, but it was beautiful, and I enjoyed my time. Now speaking of trips, I know you moved to Ohio from Michigan for college, I believe. What was it that captured your heart and made you want to stay initially?
Yeah, so I came down here from a small town in Michigan because Cincinnati was the big city. My goal was to leave Cincinnati and go to DC and become a lobbyist for NASA, which obviously I got a little sidetracked along the way. But between junior and senior year at Xavier, I became student body president by accident and ended up having to stay this summer here. And so I spent the summer as we were really starting to experience some revitalization efforts around the city. And they just announced we were getting the Reds All-Star game. And it was just like, it was such a fun time. And to see the potential of Cincinnati, I was like, I can't just move away and tell everybody Cincinnati's a great city. I've got to be part of it. And so I stayed and I built my career trying to be part of that revitalization.
That's incredible. And I know we'll get into it a little bit later, but you've done so much in the revitalization effort, from increasing the budget to even working on bringing big events. But before we get there, did you always know you wanted to run for city council? I know you said student body president, but was this always in the cards?
No, I would not say it was always in the cards. It's even surprising when I made the decision to go for it, I would say. The student body president was more of a joke than anything when I ran. Wanted to be a lobbyist for NASA. And so in college, I ran for student government because I was like, well, I should know what this is like to run for office if I want to get a poli-sci degree. And then I did it for a year and I hated it. And so I decided I was going to run again. And I got elected as a write-in because I made a bunch of jokes in the wrong room, and so people wrote me in, and people got disqualified, and so they had like 15 people get elected and 1 write-in just by accident. And that was me. So I was like, well, I'm here. Why not try for the top spot? Because if I have a problem with the system, why not try to fix the system? It helped that I was interning in DC and I was hanging out with a bunch of congressmen, and I was like, wow, they're not these superheroes that I built them up to be in my head. That I was like, oh, I could do this. So I ran and I got elected, and I thought that'd probably be the end of my politics. And then working in College Hill, as we'll probably talk about, doing revitalization efforts there for 7 years. I just worked in city council a lot. And so They did a major turnover in terms of the elected leadership in 2021, and I was kind of one of the wily veterans that they were working with in the community. And I was like, I was ready to leave College Hill, and they wanted somebody with some experience in the development area, and so it was a great match, and it worked out, and I'm glad to be here.
That is incredible, and it seemed like it was a natural pick, and a natural transition. Obviously, having time to see what politicians were like and get that experience, but then also having that development experience as well. And when it comes to neighborhood development, I know that's something that you are a part of and really pounding the pavement when it comes to that. So much that you increased the budget by $12 million. What generated that, and why did you see the need for that? Because obviously it's important, but just break us down your thought process.
So my career began in this neighborhood called Sedamsville, which is on the lower west side of Cincinnati. It's where Pete Rose learned to play baseball. It's all of three streets, like literally, and the way they're designed, it's like a blink and you miss it. Like you won't realize it because it's just kind of like nestled right up in the valley. Sedamsville is one of the smallest neighborhoods in Cincinnati, and it was basically controlled by a slumlord who, for 30 years, owned the vast majority of the community. And so, trying to do community development efforts there, it's like you can do one house, but that doesn't matter when the slumlord owns 40 or 60 houses, however many it was at the time. And the neighborhood all do it. And so the people that lived there were really like they were last chance renters. Like they knew that if they got evicted, they may not have another home to go to. And so they just tolerated the slumlord. I mean, so much so that according to the federal lawsuits that were brought against him, he was propositioning women in lieu of rent. It was bad. It was really, really bad. And the only reason it came forward is because somebody slipped up and mentioned it. And I connected them to the right legal resources. It took 7 years for that court case to wind its way through the courts. I left Sedamsville in 2015, 2016 to go to College Hill. Now, College Hill is the opposite. They're one of the largest neighborhoods in the city of Cincinnati. They're not like very well off, but they're affluent in ways that Sedamsville is not. They had a strong business district they were looking to revitalize and take to the next level, and they were really heavily invested in their redevelopment effort because they had the financial means to be invested in it. And for 7 years, I led that redevelopment effort of over $85 million. We were incredibly successful because I was surrounded by so many people that were so invested, and like they really take the time to teach a 25-year-old how to do anything from like basic budgeting to the complexities of a new market tax credit development deal. So when I joined City Council, the reality is there's a lot more Sedamsvilles in the world than there are College Hills. College Hill is very much set up and positioned for success, and even then we need a dramatic and significant support from the city of Cincinnati. And if you're in Sedamsville, you just feel like there's no hope for you. That court case I mentioned began right as I was leaving Sedamsville and didn't end until I joined City Council. So I left and built an entire career while they waited, hoping the courts would finally get it sorted out, which they did, and they have a path forward now. But now the city has to step in again. And so for me, a big part of my reasoning, you mentioned earlier, right, is like I know how politicians interact, but I also know how the community feels with how the city interacts with them, and how the city's there for them or not there for them, and what it feels like to be told, like, wait your turn. And to be like, what does that mean? When is my turn going to come? Like, is that 15 years? Is that 25 years? Like, do I just have to stay here and wait? And so, yeah, a big part of my priorities and efforts at City Hall is like, no community should have to wait. If a community wants to make their lives better, wants to make their community better, has a vision for how they want to do that, we should be ready to meet them where they're at and help them get there. And there's a lot of tools that we use in College Hill that I think made a very successful effort. And so how do I replicate those on a policy basis and on larger citywide basis? And that's where I spent a lot of my time and energy. And I'll tell you, $12 million sounds like a lot of money to increase in a budget. It's nothing for community development. Like it's nothing at all for the efforts it's going to take to really revitalize the city at the scale we need to revitalize it at.
For sure. Yeah, when it comes to real estate development, yeah, 12 million bucks is not a lot, but the amount that you were able to increase it was important and impactful. And now I'm hearing just comes from a place of understanding what people need. I think you made a very strong point. When is my turn? When is it our turn? How long do I need to wait? And to have a council member that has felt that, but then also seen the other side of a different community that, every community has different needs, but they had certain resources and certain needs that the previous community didn't have. So you got to see both sides of that coin. And I think that helps and clearly has informed everything that you're doing on the council. And there's a couple initiatives that I definitely want to ask about in a second, but for our viewers, and Seth, I always let everybody know, half of our viewers are leading municipal governments, but the other half are young people that are either looking to be civically engaged or potentially looking for jobs in local government, maybe even to be an elected official. So for that side of the population, what is city council and what do they do?
So here in Cincinnati, our government has three branches. It's a hybrid of a city manager and a strong mayor. So we couldn't make it any more complicated if we tried. The city manager essentially is the COO of our city. She oversees everything that, all the operations and administration, provides the budget, etc. The mayor has the ability and power to hire and fire the city manager, and then they can veto council legislation. And then council is basically the oversight, and our job is to be passing legislation and really providing that guidance. But it's kind of strange because all three branches technically are the leader of the city in their own unique way. And so my role with city council, the way I was raised in Cincinnati and as I came up, is really that oversight and that providing the strategic guidance. The mayor provides a lot of the leadership for the city, and the city manager is supposed to implement and execute, but city council is not a voiceless organization. And so I've really honed in on economic development, community development, and I just spend a lot of time and energy beating the drum on that, and where we can do better and how we can draw more people up through the ranks. The chief of staff was saying recently that a lot of things that we are getting funded in the budget this time is just because I've been annoying enough for my 2.5 years on city council that I just won't stop talking about it. And so now people have just accepted that that's how it must be done because Seth won't shut up about it, so it must be okay. I like to think that works, but that's what city council does. It's just a lot of, and I think that you do better at city council the more people you talk to. There's the more you try to take the time to learn and educate yourself, but recognizing that while your job touches a lot of things, like there's 9 of us. So my job, again, is very central on economic development, community development. I've really learned a lot about public safety, so I've taken on police and fire as kind of a subcategory. Like those areas I know, so those are areas I stick to, and those are the areas I really like my energy on. When it comes to social services or crime, those are areas that obviously I want to make sure we have solutions on, but those are not my areas of expertise. So I rely on other council members that come with that background to like really help.
That's that's very informative. And the way you broke it down, even the nuances of Cincinnati specifically having that strong mayor or quasi strong mayor, city manager breakdown. So no, thank you for that. And then for our viewers that may have an issue, like what is the best way to reach out to their council person, or when should they reach out to their city council person?
Yeah, anytime. I mean, I think that there's this weird feeling out there that like you're gonna annoy us. Like, not at all. We can't solve problems we don't know about. We can't be involved in things that we're not even aware of on the radar. The squeaky wheel gets the grease philosophy is like very real. So, there's varying degrees of like what type of interaction you're having with the city of Cincinnati. So when I was working in College Hill, there were people in the city administration that I worked with constantly. And so I had to be careful, like work with them until I couldn't work with them any longer. And then if I needed someone to break it, then I'd go to the politicians. But if you're not in that space, if you're just trying to live your life in the city of Cincinnati, your trash isn't getting picked up, or your street's not being plowed, or there's noise complaints that are just going completely unheard. These are issues that I've literally dealt with in the last week. Reach out immediately. Don't sit there and wait and hope that maybe your calls into some unknown numbers are going to work. Like, just reach out. Our emails are all online. Emails are probably the best way to do it, because voicemail, like you also know when voicemail is going to get there versus emails come to people's phones. And then we can solve these problems almost immediately. And we can get people activated on it, and we can just be like, hey, go look at this, because it cuts through a lot of the bureaucracy. And that's why we're here at the end of the day, is like just to make sure people's lives are good and moving in the right direction.
That's so good to hear. And for our viewers out there, that is why one of the reasons why they ran is to support you and support your communities. If you do have an issue, always reach out. I loved what you said there. We can't solve problems we don't know about. And for that reason, I think it's incredible that you guys avail yourself to the community in that way. And then just a couple interesting things that I saw when I was doing my research. How did the Quick Strike Acquisition Fund and the Gap Housing Fund come to life? So if you could explain those, and then what changes have you seen since then?
Yeah. So when I was in College Hill, we had the origin story of College Hill was they were doing redevelopment activities with air quotes, which a lot of nonprofits do because it's really hard to do redevelopment, and there's just not a lot of money for it. So this is the late 2000s, early 20s. And an individual came up after the annual meeting there were just a bunch of volunteers and said, it's really cute. You're trying to do development, but like, you're not. you're not doing anything. And so go actually do redevelopment. And if you can raise $200,000 from the community, I will find people to match it. And that person became known as the benefactor, and they raised the money, and they used that money to then buy buildings to do the redevelopment efforts. And so by the time I joined College Hill, they owned 3 or 4 properties. And then during my tenure, we ended up expanding to owning over 30 something properties and really leaning in with the community to buy these properties, raise the money, buy the properties. And, if you're raising money from the community to implement their vision, you can't displace the community because that's where your resources come from. Anyway, so the benefactor really gave me a crash course and a master's degree in business administration, I would say, because they taught me that they would never give us a dollar for operating, but they would give us money to buy things that could then generate its own revenue so that we could then implement it and do the next thing. So by the time I left College Hill, there was over $2 million a year in net operating money just coming in for us to pay people. That didn't require us to rely on grants or the city or whoever was in charge, whether they liked you or didn't like you. Like, we just had money. So we were using that money to hire people from the community who, maybe were recovering addicts or just retired people who had skill sets we needed to keep the avenue clean, to go fix buildings, to like be part of the team. And we had 17 people working for us by the time I left. And that's that's my ideal of community development. Like, that's the vision of it, is that the community's vision's coming to life. They have professionals that they can afford, like real salaries too. You're not just expecting to do it for cheap. And so when I got to City Hall trying to replicate the success, the origin of that is the ability to buy and control critical properties in your neighborhood. And so I just started pitching this idea of this quick strike acquisition. And quick strikes, it constantly is misunderstood. People initially thought it was like, just spend this money right away. And that's not what it is. In acquisitions, somebody will call you and they'll say, and I had this happen to me many a times, like, Seth, I got this building. I'm willing to sell it to you. You've got 1 week to let me know if you can buy it. And you're like, well, it's Wednesday. I got to tell you by Friday. Like, I don't know where I'm going to get this money. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Like, I had to figure all these things out. And so that was the origin of it. It was like having a pot of money that these groups would be able to just call and say, hey, we got this really great deal. We need to buy it. So we got that money in the closeout, which is basically surplus after the budget. It was just $1 million. And we didn't, my first lesson in politics was we didn't provide any professional guidance on it. We just called it quick strike acquisition, $1 million. We figured they would read our minds or something. They put the money out there, and they literally took it literally to say, just spend this money as fast as possible. And they spend it like the worst possible ways. They went and bought 5 buildings, the group that was overseeing it, but none of them had any impact in any way. And so then I drafted like a 3-page manifesto that just like outlined exactly everything I just told you. Like, this is what the goals are. This is how we're trying to get the money out. Like, this is why it's called Quick Strike. And since then, it's been spectacular. There's a great news article about it in January for a neighborhood called Northside that had a property available for acquisition that they had no idea where they were going to get the money for. But if they didn't buy it, there was another group lined up that was kind of problematic in the neighborhood. And so they needed the money or they were going to have a dilemma. And so the Quick Strike moved quickly. Within 45 days, the money dropped in bank accounts, building was bought. It's in great safe hands. And it really gives us critical control of a block that we otherwise had never had control of in that neighborhood. That's the goal of it. Another community in Mount Washington bought a property that has now been put into an affordable housing deal. And for the first time, Mount Washington's going to have an affordable housing development because of Quick Strike. Same thing in Clifton Heights. So that's where the genesis of the idea came. Now, the next problem is that once you own the properties and you're trying to do development, it's so expensive to do development that gaps form. And development slows down and things get more expensive because you're constantly looking for where the cash is to make these deals happen. And so as we were wrestling again with a surplus at the end of last year, we felt we had enough money in Quick Strike and that they needed to prove concept, that they could listen and learn. And so we put $5.5 million aside to just plug holes in projects that could begin immediately. Like, if not for money right now, if they've done everything else that you're possibly supposed to do in the development phase, there's still a gap. We're going to plug it and you're going to build it, because we in Cincinnati and across the nation, we need housing, and housing is expensive. And so we put this $5.5 million for it. We're trying to get more money in the budget this year for it. But ultimately, now it creates a pipeline where now you can say, that's the building I need. We got money to buy it. Then we say, go do all the development stuff, and you get to the end. Now there's money for you to close the hole and get it done. And so it de-risks the process enough that a developer can start seeing this as we consistently fund it in the years to come, that you come to Cincinnati and it's a safe place to invest your money. It's a place that wants you to invest your money, and we're going to have your back from the beginning to the end of the cycle to make sure that this development deal happens in a timely fashion and we get more housing up and running.
I love it. I think that is so important, and just to hear from the genesis of it, that this was for the community, by the community. We're going to raise some money, and then we're going to put it to use. And after we've put it to use, we're then going to be able to hire people, give them real opportunities, whether they're suffering from some substance abuse or retired people, but they're our community. So we're able to create not only assets for the community, but also jobs for the community, by the community. I love that, and it's so important. I've been in real estate development and also in business acquisitions. A lot of times somebody just doesn't want to go through the process, but for a little bit less, and if they know you, hey, if you can take this deal off my hands in the next 2 week quick due diligence, you could have it at this price. And deep down, if they were to do an entire process, they would get a totally different price. But you have to be opportunistic, and it's so smart that you guys are thinking of that, but from a community centered perspective. And then the gap housing fund. Anybody that's done real estate knows there are always gaps, there's always overruns, and there's just sometimes, even when you're doing your best. I work with schools that were doing expansions, and it's just the price just kept going up, kept going up, kept
Yep.
going up. So no, it is really great what you guys are doing, and you're very forward thinking, and I can tell from your background you utilize that. When you guys apply those funds, are they, so let's say for Quick Strike, is the fund owned by or the assets purchased, are they partially owned by the city of Cincinnati, or is it like a loan to or just a grant to the people that are making the acquisition?
Yeah, so right now it is a grant, and so it
Okay.
goes through a nonprofit, and then there are clawback provisions. So if they don't deliver on things, we can claw the property back. But ultimately, yeah, the intent is for these nonprofits to be able to grab, buy, acquire, and then hopefully start spinning cash off for themselves, so that whatever investment the city makes is multiplied.
That's, yeah, I love that. So if you could see half these questions I'm asking are just for me, I'm just like, wow, this is a nice model, and I really appreciate that. So you're supporting nonprofits, you're supporting the community, and I know one thing that's big for you is small business. How have you guys been able to support small business in Cincinnati?
Yeah, that one's turned out to be a lot more complicated and tricky than the first batch, because public money going toward a for-profit is always just more complicated. One of the areas that I've not yet succeeded, but I'm howling to the moon about, is that I think we need to start uncapping what our small business support is directly. It's, you'll put $1 million towards something and then artificially cap it at $5,000, and it's like not worth the time that it takes for the small business to apply for that money. And I think we need to recognize that every small business is special and unique. So what does it actually take to provide you critical support and catalysm? A big area that I've taken on, though, is the city's indirect impact on small businesses. So, for example, a water main breaks or a water main scheduled to get replaced. We come out there, it takes 6 weeks to fix it or replace it, and we manage to tear up the entire street. We have a policy at the city that they would put up signs that say, like, where that area is, they'll say these businesses are still open. The sign will be half a mile down the road. So anything between the sign and where it actually starts doesn't get listed. And we are finding that small businesses were being really negatively impacted by it. And so now, I mean, it's a small policy change, but it's a huge impact on these businesses of, $9,000-$10,000 a month swing because their name wasn't on a sign. That's now been fixed. We had a incident where one of the most critical arteries in our city caught on fire, and we had to shut down this bridge for 3 months. And it really cut off our downtown because people were rerouted during peak traffic hours. Like, it was just gridlock, and so people started avoiding downtown during the holidays. A big area that I stepped out on that and was just raising a fuss about how we need to do better by the businesses. We need to do better by getting the bridge fixed faster, but then we also need to stop telling people to work from home and to go, because it's November and December. That's like prime time for businesses to make their money. And we fought too hard to get our downtown back and then lost so much ground during COVID. And we're fighting again to bring it back. We can't afford to lose it again. And so it's small things like that that have actually, I think, had a huge impact on small businesses. Also trying to find ways to, and San Antonio does a really fantastic job of this, provide direct business support during those times where the water main breaks and you have to close the street down. And there is just an unintended consequence where you can't get to the business. How do we keep them open and provide grants or loans to keeping these businesses businesses going. It's those areas that require forward thinking, but also looking around across the nation and be like, who does a really great job? And then let's go copy what they're doing.
I think you hit the nail on the head. There's also, if there's a model out there, no need to reinvent the wheel, but you also said something that's very important, especially for those businesses that are cyclical, those holidays, call it end of October, November, December, and beginning of January. It's just so important. So I love that they have a council person that understands that and is fighting for it, because one down season for a business on the brink can, make sure it could be almost a death sentence. So, um, when you start to talk about the downtown, like how do you keep it vibrant without like leaving neighborhoods behind? I know sometimes we can see big pushes to get people downtown, but how does that affect the neighborhoods?
Part of it is we can't keep making them compete against each other.
Mhm.
The downtown vitality is critical for the rest of the neighborhoods to have success as well. And so I view them from very different buckets. One, like we need people to come downtown. We need people to experience downtown. We need people to fall in love with downtown and Cincinnati as a whole. Taylor Swift was in town and she brought something like 1 million people into Cincinnati because she was in town for a weekend. 1% decided they wanted to live in Cincinnati because they had a really great experience here. That's 10,000 people. And they're not all going to live downtown. They're going to go move out to these neighborhoods, and they're going to go with these businesses out in these neighborhoods. They're going to stay in communities around Cincinnati. That's the positive of the downtown vitality. Bengals are playing like trying to get people out and about. You hear these economic development numbers all the time. Like, what's the economic impact of an event we have called Blink? $150 million. That $150 million is money spent directly on small businesses. So there's real money being spent in the city of Cincinnati. It's not just some artificial number that's created. And so then how does that tie into neighborhoods? Again, that ties into building strong community development corporations that can really be supportive of these neighborhoods, that no longer have to spend every minute trying to think of how do I make a dollar versus how can I actually support my neighborhood. By the time, so when I started in College Hill, we were doing this event called Derby Day. I don't know why College Hill was in the Derby Day business, but we needed to raise money. So every first weekend in May, we were doing an event that raised us $30,000. And by the time COVID happened, we had to cancel it. And then we started rethinking how we did events. And we were well enough off because of the buildings we owned that we started redesigning our events not to be fundraisers, but to be things that taught you how to engage in the business district. And what that meant was College Hill had 6 blocks of business district. And so how do we get people to walk all 6 blocks? And so we did, the traditional light up College Hill. Everyone's got a light up event, right? Well, we made it all beautiful throughout the avenue. And then every block you could see the next thing. So wherever you were, you could see where you wanted to go to. But think of yourself as a parent with like a 5-year-old. You're not going home that night. You're going to go each event and, it's cold out. So when you get cold, what are you going to do? You're going to go into the business and then you're going to spend money in the business because that's weird to be in the business and not spend money in the business. And everyone wins, right? That was made possible because of money that we have been able to generate ourselves, but also we got money from the city. And that's where this downtown vitality is successful. Downtown vitality brings people in, gives you more money for revenue that we can then do to support these other communities. But then people that have come and fall in love with Cincinnati are going to go to these communities and they're going to find their house and then they're going to want to stay and live there. And I think that's just so critical.
It's an important, and from the light up downtown, the downtown vitality. I think you've brought events like, I think Forbes 30 under 30 was there. You put in a bid for Sundance.
We almost won
Definitely.
Sundance.
What'd you say?
We almost won Sundance.
Almost. Oh man.
We're second place.
Wow. That's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Don't sleep on Cincinnati.
Wow. You're thinking forward, and I heard it a little bit, but I just want to double click on it. So obviously with like Forbes 30 under 30, like there's an economic boost. There's a cultural boost. You're bringing different types of people to the community. When you're doing that, what's the expectation of trying to make that stick? Like you said it a little bit, but how do you kind of go about that, and how is that gone from some of these big events?
Well, yeah, when a big event's coming to Cincinnati, there's a lot of facets that I'm looking at. One, the economic impact we're going to have for the downtown, which again is helping small businesses. But more importantly, it's bringing people to Cincinnati and experiencing Cincinnati. When we went through the Sundance process, there were some hit pieces put out on us at the very end that were like, what's iconic about Cincinnati? I'm not a social media person, but we had tweet that responded with like what's iconic and like 4 or 5 pictures that got an insane amount of traction on Twitter. Because the reality is Cincinnati is actually like really cool, really historic. I mean, you look at the 1800s, you can't read about anything historically without Cincinnati being mentioned because we were part of the heartbeat of the United States. And we get overlooked now because people think of us as flyover country. That only changes if we get people to come here. Because when people come here, they say, oh, wow, why was I not thinking about Cincinnati? Why have I never heard of Cincinnati? Why not think about Cincinnati? And we need to do better. We need to tell that story better. We need to communicate that better. But also we just need people to come and experience. And that was a big takeaway from Sundance. Like to a T, everybody who came to inspect us for Sundance was like, why have I not thought about Cincinnati before? And then everyone on the outside was like, why is Cincinnati considered for Sundance? Like, that's insane. And so we do these events. We try to get these big events here because the big events show people why you want to come to Cincinnati. And it brings the next big event. It brings the next family. It brings the next Fortune 500 to say, well, we can open up our headquarters here. That's the way of the future for this country. If you want your city to thrive, you got to find a way to get people to want to live there and be part of it. And I think Cincinnati's got all the natural assets for it. Now we just have to tell the story of why you want to be here because we're not flyover country. We're not whatever the stereotype is that you think of Cincinnati. That's not us. It's it, and you will not regret it.
That makes so much sense to me. You have all the natural assets. So just by getting people to visit, that can lead to the next person visiting, the next event. And obviously behind that becomes the industry wanting to be there because the quality of life is there. So it's a really great economic development engine you guys are creating around these big events. And I think that's very smart. I know my generation and definitely the generation below, events and experiences are how you kind of get us. So I think it's smart that you guys are on the forefront of that. And on that note, are there any projects or initiatives that are kind of upcoming that you're very excited about?
Well, we are launching the Cincinnati Sports Commission, which, if you don't believe me that Cincinnati is on the rise, all of our regional peers are upset we have a sports commission now because we're going to start taking businesses away from them. That's going to be cool because we have not really played on the sports scene like we should. We're going to compete for the NFL draft. We're going to talk about bowl games. I would like us to be able to be hosting opening weekends, if not Sweet 16s for March Madness, men's and women's. We have the Club World Cup coming up this weekend in Cincinnati, but we got to do more of that. And so I'm really excited about that. That's things that are not inside baseball. We're going through the budget right now, so a lot of it's just making sure that we've got money for the economic development. There's some other things in the fire I can't talk about yet. I will say Sundance did more for Cincinnati than just finished second, and so I'm optimistic there are things on the horizon there.
Love that, and I'll have to circle back, and I'll be watching LinkedIn to see those. That sports commission is big. One of the past people I spoke to was Lorena Riffo Jensen. She's economic development director out in Salt Lake, and she was responsible and one of the people responsible for the first Olympics out there, and now they're working to get another one. And just hearing it's staggering much comes with the Olympics. Obviously, you have to have the infrastructure and you have to be able to do it, which it sounds like you guys are. But we're talking about long-term changing of communities, even from a perception standpoint. When I think of Atlanta, one of the things you think of is the Olympics. When I think of Salt Lake, I think of the Olympics. So from that perception that you guys are working every day to make sure it's in line with who you actually are, I think the Sports Commission will definitely do that. I got to come up there when you guys have the Sweet 16 for sure. Now, always say this, and thing that you're talking about is very important, from the economic development you're doing with the events to the supporting nonprofits and creating strong communities through real estate. But I always say everything can't be sunshines and rainbows. If there was one maybe challenge or problem that you can just like snap your fingers and change, what would that be for you or for Cincinnati?
I think we need to embrace the possible of what the world could be. Cincinnati keeps saying that we're the biggest small town that's a city or something like that. I don't even try to remember what we say because I think it's ridiculous to even think that way. The reality is we're a big city and we got to really embrace that mentality. We were shocked and happy we finished second at Sundance. I'm like, we shouldn't be shocked that we were considered. Like, there's a reason we all live here. And we should be proud. We should be showing that off. And there's 300,000 of us in the city, 2 million of us in the region. we're a big area, and if you merge us with Dayton, we become one of the top 10 in the nation. I would like the city to, as a whole, across the, we just need to embrace this, like, we are the big kids at the table mentality. I like to think about it like when you're a freshman in high school, everybody's the cool kid above you. When you're a junior in high school, you got to realize you're the cool kid now. And I think we're at that stage where we got to either embrace that we're a cool kid, or we're always going to wonder why we weren't the cool kid. But you were the thing I'd change right now.
That's so interesting. Typically, like one of the answers I hear a lot is outward perception, whether this perception that we are a small town, or the perception is we are just a rural community, or perception that we have too much crime. But it feels like it's almost more of an internal perception that you wish could be changed, and that's important. And I think to your benefit, I think that's an easier one to change a little bit. It's like, hey, we took a shot at Sundance and they were amazed at what we were able to do. We have a ton of big events. We were on the cutting edge in so many different arenas. So I definitely think that's something that you can easily change. Now, when you think about what you've been able to accomplish and what you're going to accomplish, what is the legacy of Cincinnati that you hope you can leave for the next generation?
When I chose to stay in Cincinnati, it was because there was so much potential. Part of my decision to go to City Council from College Hill was I wanted to really help every neighborhood feel like they could achieve that vision and their dream. And so really build off what that potential is. And I hope by the time I leave, and what I can look back fondly on is that we broke down barriers of waiting in line, and it became a matter of if you're willing to work hard for it, you can have it. I hope that we continue to dream and reach for the stars, even when people might think it's ridiculous. And I hope that by the time I depart from City Hall, that people start to believe a little bit more that the impossible can be possible. That's all.
I hear that through line in everything you're saying, the belief and almost the assumption of greatness. It's like we're doing this. It's not going to be a surprise when we're doing this. So that from the top trickles down to everyone else. I want to be XYZ, and I know my community will support me. I want to create this initiative. I know my community will support me. So that assumption of greatness, I think, is really important. And last question is, how are you guys kind of reaching out to younger generations? Like, what initiatives or what strategies are you kind of using to outreach to, I'd say, Gen Z and now even Gen Alpha?
Yeah, we that's a great question. Top of my mind right now is that we are spending a lot of our energy on what's called Rec at Night. And so opening up our rec centers on the weekends and in the evenings so they just have places to go and have fun. I'm trying to evolve them so they're not just, what you think typically of a rec center, but have, opportunities for some online gaming. You can tell I don't play it, so I don't know how to describe it. Really being open in that way, hiring more to be, lifeguards and like really be competitive in that space. They are the future, and you're even thinking about police and fire. We've created up pipelines where in high school you can go through these programs, learn how to be a police officer or firefighter. But then you aren't often, like, as a police officer, you can't become a police officer until you're 21. And so what do you do during that 3-year window where you graduate? Well, now we're creating a process where you can get hired into the city and work in the administrative side until you can become a police officer full time. And so just finding ways to just continually engage and help them achieve their dreams. Because I'll tell you, if I knew when I was in high school what it's like to be a police officer or firefighter, I'd be that right now. I wouldn't be a politician, but I didn't have that opportunity. I didn't have that experience. And so I'm glad that we're finding ways to really break down those barriers now.
I love that. Providing people a safe place to express themselves and have fun is so important, especially when you're young and you feel like sometimes you don't have your place that you can call home. That's just yours. That's for you. It's not for just the college kids. It's not just for young adults. It's for you. So I know we had a couple places like that in my community. It just felt so good. But also bridging the gap in employment with working at the city. Like that's everything that I think is important. One of the reasons I do the podcast is to get people involved, to know the opportunities that they have working with the city. And it sounds like you guys are truly meeting them where they're at, even during their high school years. And then when there is a gap, you're able to plug that. So I think you can have a couple things happen there. You can have a great police and fire, but then you can also have people that at the end of their career come back and then want to serve because they've seen what working for the city is like. So I definitely tip my hat to you there, Seth. So any final words that you want to leave our viewers with?
Yeah, I think the big thing for my philosophy is, if you can dream it, you can make it happen, and that's true on any level. So don't hold yourself back just because it hasn't been done yet. It's fully possible. Just get out there and, as I said with the budget, like just keep saying it enough that it becomes annoying and people make it happen.
That's a great way to end it. If you can dream it, you can believe it, and you got to say it to yourself and say it out loud as many times as you can until it just becomes a thing. Because people have heard it so much. So whether that's with the city government, whether you're an artist, whether you're a creator, or whether you want to be the mayor, just say it enough and take the actionable steps to get there. Seth, I appreciate it. Once again, this is Seth Walsh. Walsh, the why when I say Walsh every time, I have like a little
Everybody
list.
does. Everybody. It's all good.
But Seth Walsh on the city council of the great Cincinnati, home of the great Saint Xavier, whom I deeply dread, but I appreciate everything they do. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing all the innovative initiatives that you're doing. You're really pushing the cutting edge, and I hope more people, and I hope we can be a part of being that megaphone to see that Cincinnati's there, and they're coming, and they're bringing even more to the table. So thank you, Seth. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Have a great one, everybody.